Okay.
Okay. Hi guys, I'm Meghan Marsden. As she said, that's how we met. I am a serial entrepreneur, so I have an interest, and I've started 7 companies and sold a handful. And I worked in M&A, mergers and acquisitions, and as a business broker selling companies. So I started my first business when I was 25. I was in the corporate world, learning a lot of lessons, and starting my companies on the side. So I was kind of straddling corporate life and entrepreneurial life. And the company I'm going to talk to you about today is called Veil Intimates, and it was the ideation really started 5 years ago with one of my very close friends, Nancy, who Becky talked about. So we had worked together in corporate America and had spent some time shopping and just talking about bras specifically and how unsatisfied we were with them. We had a great experience at Soul Lingerie in Cherry Creek, spent a bunch of money at their summer sale, and said, how could we still be spending so much money and this product really still not be that great? And so we thought, how hard can it be? We'll just start a company. And I was like, I've done this before, we'll see what happens, and we'll just learn the industry. So my background is not apparel, I'm not a designer, I am just a person in corporate America that was really in sales and marketing, operations and finance in different verticals, and then had experience starting various companies, real estate, mergers and acquisitions. I own a doggy daycare, a call center for student loan refinancing, and then a logistics company. So no industry one the same, but business is business at the end of the day, and if you know those fundamentals, you can really apply them to any industry, which I think is where you guys are at today, is to figure out what your passions are and where you'll be going through your schooling of creating a business plan and preparing for business. So basically, oh, thank you. And please stop me at any time if you have questions. This isn't meant to be formal and me talking at you. It can be, so if you don't have questions, that's fine, but I have no problem with you all raising your hand and saying, tell me about that or whatever. So yeah, so really it started the spark of idea. So I never thought I would have a bra company or be in apparel, frankly. When I was a little girl, I always wanted to be a CEO of a Fortune 500 corporation, and I was very fortunate to go really high up in a Fortune 500 company in a VP level before I turned 30, which was fantastic, and I just cut my teeth and learned a ton. So one thing I'll say about my experience and that I'm very fortunate for is my corporate life and learning a lot of lessons on someone else's dime instead of making my own mistakes in my personal businesses. So this idea just came to us, and we're like, we'll go to some conferences and really learn about the fashion industry and manufacturing. And really where it began is we just wanted to create a line for women for medical reasons. So we have both been touched with family members who have had breast cancer, and we found that there were really not a bra line for women who've experienced any sort of surgery. And so 5 years ago, not only for us did we want to create something that fit us better, but there was this idea of creating a medical line. And so that's really where we started. And this will begin to tell you about how many twists and turns we took in our business, which I think is what Becky is inferring on, testing the market and understanding where you might need to pivot in your business. So we had this spark of idea. We're going to create custom bras for women who've experienced mastectomy, using 3D printing, and create customized prosthetics through 3D printing, and we'll sell to doctors' offices. My background in corporate life was in the medical industry, so I worked in medical distribution and medical manufacturing of medical products, both disposables and implantables. So I had an experience with doctors, so I thought, okay, this is great. We both had an interest in this, and it was just this spark of an idea. So we started going to conferences and understanding manufacturing. So there's manufacturing conferences in New York and Las Vegas, which sounded great. You could go to a conference and spend the weekend in Vegas and learn about the industry. So that's the fun part about doing business with one of your best friends, is parlaying that into many things. But we really were at the 100 level. We weren't even at 101, understanding apparel. So we had hardly even knew what two-way stretch fabric was, frankly. I mean, which is a pretty fundamental piece. Some people who just wear clothes know that, right? So it just took a lot of time to understand the industry. We spent almost 2 years investigating manufacturing domestically and overseas, understanding components, and through this process really realized that our idea, we were a little over our heads, and that we needed to crawl before we could walk, before we could run.
Did you actually go overseas to check out the production facilities over there?
No, in LA. So we were like wandering around the garment district in LA, like getting notions, trying to make our product with a small batch manufacturer in LA. But we had talked about going to Shenzhen, which is a province of China that makes predominantly most of the intimate apparel in the world. So we didn't go. We were trying to figure it out both domestically, and then quickly realized, wow, a lot of stuff isn't made domestically, unfortunately. But we did find a lot of people who wanted to help us. So through our naive conversations with people, we very much earned favor with them, just to say, we think we can do this. Can you help us? There's no directory in the fashion industry to point you to different people. So it is a literal unveiling of networking to find those people, which is why I think it took us so long. Unlike some other industries that maybe are more networked and connected, fashion is a little bit guarded in their resources. So you have to convince them that you are worthy of the resource. And so that just took us time. So in that, we gathered these components. We had this idea we were going to make this medical bra line, and through that process in 3D printing, we realized that we had this idea where we could utilize this 3D printing component that we had thought of to be part of any day bra. So really getting rid of being the white space between underwires and wire-free. Now I know many of you are men in this room, so that may not land on you, but that's a pretty big deal for women. Most women aren't like clamoring to put on their underwire bra, and the market is really shifting to wire-free, but it's not that supportive. And so for us, we were really wanting comfort with the same aesthetic of an underwire bra, and we couldn't find it, but we knew we were onto something. And so we started working with this 3D printer in Colorado, actually. We called them up, and most of the 3D printers are engineers, and most of them are male, so we're calling them to say, we have this idea of getting rid of underwires, and I think they were kind of like, what's an underwire? So we show up and meet with them, kind of talk through what we're thinking and what that looks like. And we spent about a year. We hired an engineer to help us so we could create scientific validation of what we were doing. So the pressure points of an underwire, getting rid of those, but creating support throughout the bra cup. And so we filled our gaps with people who knew more than we knew, and frankly vendors who knew more than we knew. So the great thing is, as we're doing all this, there's this amazing thing happening in the marketplace where VCs and private equity groups are just throwing money at this space. So there's a lot of emerging brands like Third Love, Lively, Knixwear that have raised millions and millions of dollars, Outdoor Voices, because this movement is happening where women are saying, I don't want to wear an underwear, I don't want a Victoria's Secret bra anymore, I want something different. And so there's a lot of focus on the marketplace. Not a ton of innovation, but a lot of different customer-facing options that are better than what traditionally happened in the marketplace. So we're kind of parallel to this amazing thing happening in the industry in both sportswear and traditional foundations, and we're figuring out innovation at the same time. And so it was just really fantastic timing, frankly, for us to have people be interested in what we're doing, having 3D printing companies interested in what we're doing, large batch raw material people, and manufacturers generally. So from all this, we're thinking, okay, we're not gonna build a brand anymore. There's so many brands, there's so much money flowing into the market to build a brand that's not really different. We should just create an innovation, patent it, and license it. And so we had this idea, okay, we'll do that brand later, and let's just really work on this thing that we have that we recognize the market's really responding to. We talked to some designers, they saw what we were doing and liked it. And so we said, we're not gonna build a brand anymore, we're going to license this innovation and patent the heck out of it. And so we started this process of creating a family of patents. So 5 different patents all over the world, basically, and started that filing process, which is a long process. If any of you guys know patent work, it's like 3 years till you basically hear anything from the office, but we're in the point that we're hearing now, and all good things, so that's good. So because this bra renaissance is happening, and VCs are spending all this money, and kind of there's this mass saturation and competition without a lot of differentiation. We didn't want to compete in that space. We have always taken the approach that we wanted to bootstrap and not raise capital. People have offered us capital and we've turned them down because we're fortunate enough to be in the position that we can self-fund currently. So that's what we did. So we worked on all this patent work, and that's predominantly what we spent 3 years ago and 2 years ago on, is building this patent work. Yeah.
How much does it cost you to like work on those patents?
Yeah, so there's multiple types of patents. So there's design patent work, which actually protects to the T your actual design, and there is a utility patent. So utility patents basically say this is how I make it, or this is what it's used for. So a design patent is cheaper. It's also harder to defend because if they make a subtle tweak to it, then it's not defensible. So a design patent is around $1,000, a utility patent is around $2,000, and then filing in different countries is when it starts to get expensive. So US patents, it can be anything, but so we have 5 different utilities and 3 different designs. All of our designs have filed and we've gotten them, and we're in our first round of getting our first utility. But this really allows for you to go super broad with your vision. So we didn't only say we're fixing the underwire, but we said we're creating something that you can integrate sensor technology in to detect any kind of disease. You can use it in a sports bra to do heart rate monitoring. You can, there's clinical trials right now for breast cancer detection and oncology. We hold patents on that. And so we use that time to say, if we could do anything outside of what we see today, what can we do? And that was really good for us because it gave us some vision and direction on where the future is, but it also said, okay, we need to work on this, but we could go here, and these are the options and opportunities. So that helps you. Yeah.
You mentioned that you were lucky enough to have capital that allowed you to kind of take this on without other people wanting to share theirs. If you were adding on team members that are really experienced and probably expecting high pay like those engineers, you don't have to share, but were you in a position of approaching them going, okay, they're so important, I'm ready to offer them like shares?
That's exactly what we did.
Okay, gotcha.
So they are like, when we were looking at engineers, we were getting bid work, and we actually went to like Colorado School of Mines and like who are some phenomenal engineers in our backyard. I mean, we sit in an amazing engineering part of the United States. And so it was going to cost us about $125,000 to hire someone for a year. And for us, it was like, we want to bootstrap, but I'm not in a situation where I can just do that. So we actually found someone who wasn't a professor at Colorado School of Mines, but a professor at DU, and also happened to have an apparel company, wrote his white paper on 3D printing heart valves, so he was familiar with 3D printing and making an innovation in apparel with also an engineering degree, and he's now a partner in our company. So it's a great way to leverage, like, avoid capital, but also get those key members super engaged, because hopefully he'll make more than he would have made in that 1 year.
Sorry.
No, keep going. Yeah.
No, I had a personal experience that really connected to that. Like, I didn't agree with my boss. He wasn't paying me for the job I was doing, but it was a startup, and it was just me and her. And then at one point, she goes, okay, out of frustration, I'll offer you 30%, just like stick with this. But at the point I was like, for you to offer 30% without a plan, knowing that I'm probably going to be going into sales, having to set that all up, I realized, like, that's a really tough call to make. Like, I could make money if I was willing to buckle down, but like, that's so scary to enter something that crazy and fresh.
Yeah, and we definitely were respectful of his time, right? So he had capacity to do other things, teach at DU, and like work on his own brand that he had. So the amount of time we were requiring in his week equated to the compensation of his shares. So I think that's a little bit of a differentiator, like full-time, no pay shares, or
Exactly.
different. Yeah. Go ahead.
I mean, I assume you've got so much more to talk about, but that part is interesting to me, how you came up with the number of shares that you were willing, you knew what his value was.
Yep.
And then taking that value to what your future value
absolutely.
is going to be.
Yep.
Is it tough?
It's tough in startup land
Yeah.
to figure out what your actual value of your company is, because it's kind of like
you know what it is, but.
Yeah, well, and you
or
think you know,
yeah,
right?
you
There's
think
no
you know, right?
numbers
Yeah.
that are real yet to
Mhm.
create the value.
Because there's no sales at this point, right?
That's correct, yep.
Mhm.
And so it's really like the very front side of startups where you're creating a valuation and figuring it out. And a lot of it is just assessing the market, right? So the bra industry, just traditional intimates, not including sportswear and swim, which we also touch on, is an $8 billion industry.
Mhm.
So you can do the thing that a lot of people do is like, well, I can get 1% of blah, 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 and then it just becomes this crazy big number,
But
right?
it sounds like you're creating something that doesn't exist.
Yeah, so it's hard to create a
Right.
mapping of like, what are the volumes, what's the true value, all this stuff, and we're in this phase still licensing, right? So we don't even know what a licensing deal looks like. We started talking to licensing attorneys in LA, and it was like, oh, it's 15 to 25% of wholesale. It's like, well, if a bra at wholesale is $30, 3 million bras are made a day, that's a lot of money. But at the same time, being reasonable to those key employees, right? To not say, well, we think our company is worth $100 million, and so we're gonna give you 3%, and that's really fair for you, you know? So just being, it was a negotiation, and we wanted to be fair, and it went really well.
Did
But
you have outside help, I guess, help you with
we had a
that,
general
those?
counsel.
Okay,
And
right,
we built
yeah,
an advisory board, so not a like committed advisory board, but we brought people alongside us who had a lot of experience, and thankfully I had some
Mhm.
experience in M&A.
Mm.
So I knew how to do valuations on company, but those companies weren't startups. Those companies were existing companies that
Yeah.
had revenues and had, you know, years of historicals to make
Mhm.
assessments on.
Mhm.
So it was really challenging. I mean, it was probably one of the hardest things is figuring out
Yeah.
value, but we had built the relationship with that key team member, so it
Mhm.
wasn't like we were working together, and we did pay him some money for like 6 months, and then we came to the agreement that he was really integral to us,
Mhm.
and then we switched to a share-based model.
Mhm.
And I mean, without that 6 months, I don't know if that negotiation would have gone the way it went.
Right.
So
Because he was able to see the vision.
he could see the vision, he knew, yeah.
Mhm. Wow.
Yeah.
You mentioned earlier, if I'm not mistaken, that you have bras that can, if you do have
Yep,
breast cancer.
prosthetic, yep.
How would that work?
So basically this isn't a prosthetic, but we 3D print our inserts. And so we can actually, there's technology, and we have patents pending on scanning a woman before her surgery, and then scanning her after the surgery, and custom making the prosthetic for the deficit to match. And then match that with, you can weight this material to make it weighted so it balances. So it could be a lumpectomy or a traditional mastectomy where you can scan pre-surgery and post-surgery to create that customization through 3D printing.
And that would be embedded in the bra?
It could be either like a pocket that it can go inside the bra with, so it's not touching your skin, or it could be flush against the skin. So this material is much more breathable. Traditional prosthetics are really hot. It's like a chicken cutlet. It's like a silicone-based product, so it's really hot against the body.
And heavy.
And heavy. So creating lighter, more breathable was part of the process. So, yeah. Yep. Any other questions before I go? You guys good? Okay, cool. So at this time, we're licensing, we're building out our patents, we're figuring out our innovation, we're figuring out the engineering. The startups are changing, athleisure wear is taking over, people like Victoria's Secret are hurting. This is happening starting 3 years ago, basically. The new generation wants wireless and bralettes. They're not interested in traditional wires. So 2 years before this whole process, this Fast Company, Forbes Marketplace stuff is happening, is when we had our idea. So the timing was really serendipitous. And so our engineer, he did all this work to basically say, and teach us. So I'm not an engineer. Teach me what stress, strain, and deformation even meant. I just knew it meant, you know, pain, discomfort, and bounce. As a woman, I didn't know what it meant. We really wanted to confirm that what we thought in our heads and our design and in our minds was actually doing what we said it was going to do. And so he utilized software systems that are used in aerospace and automotive to create we call her our Athena, it's a woman in the computer that basically you can change her size and have her do different activities and see how our support structure is different than a traditional support structure. And getting all the data points for proof of concept. So we're in proof of concept, we're confirming that what we say is true in science, because at a lot of major sporting brands like Adidas and Nike, they have teams of engineers that test products. And so there was no way we could go into a big brand like that not knowing, and really going to the market and saying, this will do that, and it won't really do it. And so that was a big part for us. So he taught us a lot about biomimicry. And biomimicry is just taking shapes from nature and seeing their strength and integrating it into design to make a stronger product, right? So it's used in bridges, buildings, that kind of thing. So you can see kind of what some of our stuff is. We use a honeycomb shape basically with different levels of thickness to create different levels of support in different areas of the bra cup. And so we went through many, many iterations, probably 8 months, hundreds of iterations to figure out what really worked, and cycled through that for different applications. So if a woman's doing yoga, what does she need versus spin classes versus running a marathon or just walking down the street? And then among the various sizes. So bras have over 52 sizes, more than any other category in apparel, including shoes. Yeah.
Did y'all take into account the fact that most women are not, the exact same
Yes.
size on?
So part of why we wanted a 3D print, and still part of this customization medical, was how can we create one side is one and one side is the other. And so really where a woman could say, or be scanned, and this is what I need here and there, and make a customized bra. So that was part of like, how do we create that science and that technology to be able to do that, because no one is symmetrical. I mean, really no one is symmetrical.
When you say create, are you creating the scanning process as well?
Yeah, so we patented the scanning process, but we worked with a digital company to help us, because not a UX writer. So that technology existed in the marketplace.
Okay.
They just weren't, they were utilizing it for jeans, or like going into, Harrods uses it in London, where you can go in and you can be scanned, and it can tell you what jean you should wear based on your body. And so they just weren't doing it to the micro level of a bra. It was very macro. And
It's also so intimate and personal.
Yes.
And
That's why we like the physician angle, because you're already
right.
trusting. Going into a fitting room is already not a great experience. And as this was happening, Third Love, which is an emerging brand, had their app that they were launching that you could take a picture of yourself with a white tank top, and it would tell you what size to wear.
Wow.
So it's very interesting. We were like really parallel with what was happening in the market.
So in order to patent the technology, or that scanning piece,
Yeah.
did you actually go to the people that already have the technology and work with them to develop a different technology that you wanted?
We did the utility process. So no one was utilizing that technology for that process.
Okay.
So the tech can exist, and that can be a specific patent, which is scanning and telling you what size you are. But our utility was, we're scanning and telling what size you are for a bra. And then we're making a bra for you.
Okay.
So that's the difference of like tech stuff that you can protect and utility. Utility is really process of use, and technology is like the actual coding of the process.
And that doesn't infringe upon their
No.
or their
Because it's
patent?
very high level. It's like, it could be used for anything. They want it as broad as possible. They want it to be everything. Your body's scanned and I'm creating XYZ for you. They don't want it to be really finite.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Have you thought about like when you take it online, like an online market, how you will customize it? Like will you just compare other people's sizes, or will they do like a picture fitting or?
Yeah, so at this time, we switched from being a brand to wanting to license all of this. So our hopes is that we would partner with someone like Third Love, and they would pay us for our innovation, and that would be, and our patents, and they would have to figure that out. So we were like, we will remove ourselves from being marketing, customer facing, social media posting, all of those things that are really large dollar things, and frankly, you would have to do a capital raise if you were going to do a customer facing, for us, we would have had to do, because we would have needed $100 million to launch a brand in that space. And it was just, for us, just the saturation, it didn't make sense. So we thought, we'll just do the patents, we'll create the innovation, we'll show them how to do it, and they can execute it. So that's where we're at in this stage. Yeah, so we're building everything up. One thing about apparel is there's not a lot of engineers in apparel. So a lot of intimate apparel designers are not scientists. And so we were really the bridge between the scientific engineering community for one of the most complex garments to make. The garment itself takes usually, for an intimate, a traditional foundation, sometimes 23 machines to make it in sewing. It's a really technical pattern. And bridging the science behind a bra to this, to our innovation and to designers, and how to integrate the two.
So, could you go back to that picture?
Yeah.
So you know how I was talking about the minimum viable product? So somebody could see it and say, oh yeah, I can see how this has value.
Yep.
Like, this might be an example of what a minimum viable product would. Because like at this point, they didn't have any they don't have any bras.
No.
So no bras at this point, but this kind of imagery helps a person say, oh my God, totally I would want one.
Yes, conceptualize, right?
Uh-huh.
Because we, at this time, we hadn't started a partnership that we created later, and we weren't integrating in. It was just like very conceptual. We had some stuff in bra cups, but we didn't actually have a bra. It was very raw. But people got it in its raw state and what we were trying to convey. And I think most of the designers connected and understood the dissatisfaction in the market. Dissatisfied marketplace, yeah. So we got here. So we basically in 2017, we had our proto, we had our conceptualization, and one of our advisors, who was so generous, really successful businessman, has sold over 20 companies globally. He wanted to help us, and I think the biggest thing, and my business partner would tell you this, is when someone offers to sit with you to give you advice, a lot of people don't end up following through and taking it. And this gentleman was very successful, and he offered us to take it, to meet with us. And so we said, yeah, we want to meet with you. We want you to tell us what we need to do. And the best advice he gave us is just find the best partners. So we were trying to figure out the fashion people in Colorado, which Colorado may be good for outdoor wear, but it is not an emerging lingerie market, which is not shocking to anyone in this room. But we're having a hard time finding these really skilled, successful lingerie designers. And he said, stop looking in Colorado and find the best. Make a list of the best people and pick up the phone. And so we did. We called Fashion Institute of Technology in New York. We called Parsons in New York. All the schools, basically, that had fashion schools. And we talked to FIT, and they said, we'll give you 15 minutes. And so we flew to New York for a 15-minute meeting. And that 15-minute meeting turned into a 2-hour meeting. And she said, you have something really special here. We want to partner with you for research. And so FIT partnered with us without taking any rights to our patents or any equity of our company, because they wanted to be a part of it, because they believed in us. And so we got 3 full-time professors to work on it for a year, to do testing, industry testing, help put it in a bra, do different iterations, do a wear test study in New York. And that's what we spent most of 2018 doing, is just refining, getting our raw concept on bodies, getting feedback, and iterating. And yeah, we finished out our study in Q4 of 2018 with great feedback and great success. And we're validated basically by women in New York. So, sorry, you had your hand up. Yeah.
That scale, the colors, what does that represent?
The amount of stress and strain. So it's where pain essentially would be. So the hot spots are the pink and the red. And blue is where the least amount is. And it's basically because in bras, a lot of people think that underwire is the support mechanism, but it's really the strap, the band. And so you're seeing the band is experiencing lots of stress and strain, and then always here all the way down. And so basically what we do is we bring the support system all the way up into the cup instead of just it ending, basically. So all of this is reduced here and brought both, so it's evened out front and back. Yeah.
I was just curious, so if FIT wasn't taking any equity from you, what were they gaining out of them doing this for you?
So they, as a school, want to be competitive in the marketplace. We're putting out innovation. And so what they're gaining from us is we said we'll be loyal to you, we'll be accessible, we will say that all this research is done at FIT. Their professors need to be doing research and putting out white papers to the industry. And so that was part of it, was really just like needing to stay relevant, bringing more innovation, professors willing to write white papers about us. And so that was what their interest level was. I mean, if they think something's gonna be really big in apparel, they knew we were either gonna go to them or someone else that's their competitor in higher ed. And so they wanted to be the ones to say in the future, like, oh, it incubated at FIT. Yeah. Yeah.
Do you think that you would have had the same conversation if you had gone to Parsons first?
No, the reason I'm actually really happy that we went to FIT first, because they're notoriously more of a business apparel school.
Right.
Parsons is much more artistry.
Yeah.
So like lots of couture, lots of like just massive artistry, and we're really function. Like we're like, how do we create function in apparel? And we wanted business minds, so they were our first choice.
Cool.
So it worked out great. But my business partner, by chance, went to Kent State in Ohio, and they're the third best fashion school in the U.S. Oddly, Kent State in Ohio. Who knew? Over LA. And so we had kind of our ranking list, but our advisor said, call number one. Just start, you get a no, next, next, next. If you already put yourself to number 75, why? Only thing they can say no, and you can get to 75 later, but you might get top 30, top 20, number one.
Cool,
So
so you just went for gold.
we went for it, yeah. I mean, the worst they could say is,
yeah.
we don't believe in what you're doing, and sorry, and that's part of being an entrepreneur, right? Thick skin and moving on, so,
Right.
yeah. Yeah, so we had our relationship at FIT, it went really great, we were getting feedback from the industry, and then one of the great things that happened at FIT is just access to these minds that are innovators in the industry, lots of access to people who know a lot more. We were learning so much because we're not intimates people, so really understanding the industry better, who the players are in the industry, both in manufacturing and design, and what that looks like. And we just had, I'll call it a chance meeting, but it, all the things seem to work out as they should. So the head of FIT's external partnerships introduced us to a graduate student, which I was telling you today, who does amazing digital work. So a lot of what's happening in the industry now is you can digitize design and then put it on an avatar that looks really human, and actually never make the apparel and let the market pre-order and then manufacture it off of those pre-orders. So it's this mentality that this graduate student was working under. She thought she could help us. We have a meeting with her in New York when we're there, meeting with our designers and professor team. And 3 minutes into the meeting, she's like, you need to meet my twin sister, bless you. I'm gonna call her right now. And she calls, we're in FIT's museum sitting in the foyer, and she puts her on speakerphone. Come to find out her twin sister was the VP of design for Victoria's Secret for 7 years and had just left. And so she had over 20 years of experience in innovation. She held patents at Victoria's Secret, which is the largest global brand in the world for intimates specifically. I think domestically they own about 65% of the market share. And so she was really in charge of building innovation at one of the most powerful companies in the industry. And she chose to leave at this time about 4 months before. And so we get on the phone with her, we're talking about our patents and what we want to do. And she actually went to school at CSU for fashion and ended up at New York running various brands and ultimately landing at Victoria's Secret. So lots of industry experience, a huge gap in our team, basically. And she's on a family vacation in January and wants to learn about our product and what we're doing and see it. And we were intending to have her consult for us to, kind of open her Rolodex and help us learn the industry even better, how we should be approaching brands. Does she know the heads of those brands and how we're gonna license? And so in January, she's in Breckenridge with her family and then comes down and we show her it, and she is thinking about it and just says, I'm in, I don't wanna consult for you, I wanna be a partner. And so for us, that was a huge validation as someone who sees 24 to 36 months ahead in the industry of innovation that we're seeing as consumers, has never seen anything like we're doing, and is saying, I want to help you, and I don't want to just consult for you, I want to be a part of your team. And so, we vetted her like we should, called references, talked to the industry, make sure she's everything we want it to be, because it literally was one in-person meeting and some conference calls, and you're making a decision on a person, which was a lot different than our key member that we worked with for 6 months. But we knew we didn't have the industry experience and needed that gap filled. And a big piece of what she wanted was us to not license, but she wanted us to sell it as a component. So it was a huge piece for us. We're sitting for 2 years thinking, we're gonna license our patents and our innovation, and she's like, my deal breaker is that you don't license and that you sell it as a component. And so we took about 6 weeks to really think about what that meant for our business and our business plan. It meant manufacturing, managing a global supply chain, managing raw materials, managing a 3D printer. Where in our minds, we're passing that on to someone else, and that's someone else's problem. So it becomes a much different business. So from there, we kind of learned more about the industry and validated and understood why we needed to shift, and so we shifted again, and that happened this year, the front side of this year. And so we spent Q1 and Q2 understanding the supply chain of building components and being a line item for brands, and creating the feasibility of scale. So how do you go from selling no components to selling 1 million components in a month? And what does that look like? And so that was a huge learning curve for us. So so that's basically where we are today, is how do we do just-in-time manufacturing with 3D printing? Can we do that? Do we injection mold and do 3D printing? All of those things that made us pivot, and a place that we hadn't gone and educated ourselves that we needed to figure out to really be viable in the industry. She came to us and said, licensing is great, but you're gonna get one licensing deal with one big company, and then that'll be it. If you are a component with your patents, you have a much faster sales cycle and a longer runway of selling this for having more longevity in the company than licensing. And these are all things we didn't know because we weren't from the industry. So it was beneficial. She'll tell us that no one from the industry would have created this. It was because we were so naive in the industry that this worked, and it was to our benefit because we didn't live in the constraints of this manufacturer, this supply chain, or this is how you always do it. But that we just thought, how can we make a better product? That was really what it came down to. And so we learned and pivoted along the way. I mean, from we're building a medical product brand to licensing this innovation that we've come up with to now being essentially a manufacturer of a component has been a winding road. And so all of our patent work, though, for the licensing has become super integral to protect us from a pretty competitive landscape globally of creating a unique product as a manufacturer. So we won't own a manufacturing facility overseas, but we will work with manufacturers to do this, which is just a totally different business model. And so this was always our passion piece, was just creating a bra that fit and women actually liked, because we didn't like what we had. And that's really what it came down to, is spending so much money, not really not fitting the landscape of women, having 52 sizes, but that not really being enough, was a huge piece on why we did it. So I can tell you that it's been an interesting ride, and definitely changed and pivoted and went along the way, but I think we've experienced just extreme validation, and our next phase is we're meeting with brands to sell our components. We have a focus group in New York next month with some of the largest brands in swim, sports, and active, and we'll be presenting what we're doing, and hopefully you'll be seeing it in 2020. So.
Now show us the different things that you have.
Yeah. So, yeah, basically we 3D print with Carbon 3D, which is a huge they've just been valuated $1 billion 3D printing company. They make the Adidas 3D printed shoe. And so we 3D print different components, and these components change based on size and activity level, and types of bras that they're fitting in. So we 3D print all of these things. This is an activewear piece, so there's support on the top and the bottom. This is more like a wire piece where it's supporting throughout the cup.
Like for what size? I know
Oh,
just
this
the
can go
girls
out,
know
this is like a E. Yeah. So we're looking at going all the way to K and above. So we want women, I don't think wire free exists in that right now. So that's what we're looking at. And then these are called cookies in the industry. They're basically the horrible things women pull out of their sports bras and swimsuits that crimple up. But part of what we wanted was to create modesty without weight. So having something be in a swimsuit that could either be fixed and supported, or you could pull it out, but it actually wouldn't like crimple and fold up into your piece. So we use these in different activewear pieces.
And so when you hold them up to the light, you can
Yeah.
see that there's that.
I can pass these around if you
Oh
guys
yeah,
want.
yeah. And there's like a.
That's cool.
You can see the structure of that 3D printed thing
Yeah, you hold it up.
inside that.
Light. Yeah, and you can see it here because it's black.
You know what
So, and really it's just creating support throughout the cup versus at the very base. And this is a sample, so don't judge the coloring, but it's fully integrated like a wired bra. It looks like a wired bra, but it feels like a wire free. So it can be plunged, etc. Yeah.
So how much is, what, like the average bra gonna go for?
It'll be just like what you're experiencing today. We figured out to cost modeling it where it doesn't, I mean, the brand could choose for it to be more, but from how much it's gonna cost them to do it versus what they're doing now, it's a wash.
So like the metal pieces that you're gonna replace will be about the same price as what you'll put.
The metal
on
pieces
them.
in the process of channeling and then
Yeah.
putting in the underwire, we did cost modeling on that. So we said, what does it cost for your sewer to create a channel and feed the wire in by hand, because that's what's happening. And how much waste do you have in that, because it's the hardest process. And then how much do those components cost you? So we took that all together and we said, we want to try to, if possible, mirror that costing modeling so that it would be a no-brainer for a brand. It would cost them the same, but they'd have interesting innovation. And I would assume to consumers that they might put a premium price tag on it because we're like an Intel inside, right? So we're like Gore-Tex or a Lycra, like a unique Swarovski, right? There's a premium name to associate with that product. So the consumer product may be more, but for the manufacturer, it's the same.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I know you're doing like a sports bra and all the different ones.
Yep.
Are you also gonna, it looks like that one's like kind of more of a lacy, like.
Everything. We want to do everything.
Okay.
We want it to be as everything you could
Versatile as
possibly want in this. We just change the components, and because we 3D print, it can literally be like, this is their best-selling bra. We can make the component to fit in your existing pattern.
I'll talk about too the how you chose the solution that it's printed in, because I know, like a bra is like washed and dried. There shouldn't be, but they are.
Oh, yeah.
And so there's shrinkage if you dry a certain material. So talk about that a little bit.
Yeah,
how you
we
chose the
spent,
material.
so that research time at FIT, we went through lots of different raw materials through failures and successes. And so not only does it have to support, but it had to remain intact and the product it had to go through at least 25 commercial wash and dry cycles. That's the industry standard. And we really wanted something where you could like throw it in the washing machine and dry it as a woman and like no problem, right? So that was a big part of what we wanted to do. And so we spent about 8 months going through raw materials to figure out what would work, which didn't shrink, which still supported, which had the stretchability and recovery that we were looking for. So it was just cycling through products. And thankfully we had Ben, who knew chemistry and taught us all about, recovery and all these things that we didn't know, tensile strength, which is, how much can you pull it until it breaks, all those things, and really creating a tight defined material that we were looking for. And then it was just, I mean, I was Googling engineering books to look for raw materials. That's what was happening. Lots of education. So, yeah. Yeah.
I know a lot of women like matching panties and bras. Would you also go into getting, even though this is more about the health for the woman, would you possibly go into the panties to match?
So we don't,
If you wanna do that?
we don't have any innovation for underwear specifically, but the brand, it would still be exactly what the brand is doing now. So if they're doing sets today, we're just using our component into their existing line. And so if that's something that they offer to their clientele, that would just be matching the set, so, yeah.
Oh, I was gonna say, but so kind of on the way back, there's this idea that you may someday have a bra line.
Yes, so
But
there's
from the
still
way.
this behind rear view that we see of the medical aspect where there could be a line that we basically sell our component into and create for the medical application, because there's still a white space there that doesn't exist. There hasn't been growth in that marketplace, and it's interesting because a lot of those bras are covered by insurance, especially for oncology, and they're just not well made. There just hasn't been a really strong focus on it, so, yeah.
But you need the volume and this other business to realize that dream.
Yeah, so we would
Right.
want to fund that
Right.
from this.
Right.
Yeah, it's still, because you do have to raise so much capital.
And you only
because
get
we're
that
raising-
from pivoting.
You get that from pivoting,
Right.
that's right. Yep,
Smart.
sorry.
I just had a question. So you guys got funding from venture capitals, right?
Nope,
No,
we
you didn't.
bootstrapped.
You just bootstrapped, so you
Mhm.
didn't go out and get it from anyone at all?
No, we've been offered money and we said no.
So it was just money that you already had that you put into this business, or?
Mhm. Yep.
And they kept their day job, so keep that in mind too. Like you can,
Yes.
all this stuff, the iteration process, sometimes it takes months. Like while FIT is working out these details, these guys are doing their other jobs that are,
Supporting
paying their
us
bill.
financially, yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly, that's right, we were, doing everything at the same time, right? So my partner has her day job, and does that during the day, and we meet nights and weekends, and she has a flexible day job, and they know what she's doing, and they're okay with it. But, and I have other companies that fund me to do this and fund this, right? So it wasn't like I quit everything and was hoping for the best in 2 months and then, can't pay my rent or something like that, right? So, VC is really interesting. I mean, it could have been an interesting thing for us. There's just different expectations, and pivoting, I think, becomes more challenging in a VC situation. And a lot of times, VCs want a little bit of revenue, and because we're creating something so new, it would have been an interesting thing. We might have had to do a friends and family round, which basically we're the friends and family round.
Yeah, that was one of my questions was, do you think you even could have got VC funding?
Yeah, I mean, we had
Really?
offers from people, yeah.
Like institutional funding?
Institutional funding.
Without selling a
Without
single
selling,
unit?
yeah. Because
That's
our
amazing.
patents.
Okay.
Yeah, so when our patents, when we received them, that immediately created
Sure,
value.
okay.
And that was when it was like, okay, you can
Yeah.
get that. It wasn't when it was like, the few slides before when I was like, this is something it's never been in a bra or on a
Right,
person,
right.
that wasn't gonna happen, so, yeah,
Okay.
sorry.
When you were iterating throughout the process and pivoting often, I'm sure you probably made, not necessarily promises, but like, you really got people hyped up along the way that maybe you now have to leave behind. Those connections that you made along the way, I've always worried about how I deal with that. I feel a little bit of guilt towards them, like I still need to waste my time and efforts on figuring out how to make this right, because I'm not gonna be using you guys anymore.
Yep.
How did you work through that? You just kind of have to plow along, because they probably expect it too, that you're just gonna keep moving until you get what you want.
Yeah, I mean, still working through it, right? I mean, we're the same, I feel the same way, like people help you get somewhere and you want to honor that and be loyal.
Right.
But not to the detriment of doing what you do, right? And so it's a delicate balance of them understanding, and hopefully you have reasonable people who see, okay, when you were this makes sense, but now you are this and it's different. And a lot of it we don't control, right? So I don't control the supply chain of a brand. That's huge. And so if things that we thought maybe we would be doing differently, we can't do because it just doesn't financially make sense. Like it would make our company not viable to sell anything. So at that point, yeah, it's a process for sure. I don't have a good answer on how to handle that, but yeah. So, yeah, go ahead.
Just kind of out of curiosity, just popped in my head, like, I know you're talking about getting into the medical field, and beyond bras. Is there any thought about like what other products you can make, like, you know, I don't know, compression socks with this kind of stuff, or, you know, body suits, you know, for people dealing with circulation issues or
Yeah,
whatever?
we have some pretty weird outlying patent claims that haven't been published, but yes, we do have some things that are, how do you utilize this in many applications that have
Cool.
nothing to do with bras. And so we have some claims that haven't published, so I won't say it because I'm being videos.
Yeah.
But-
That's fair.
So yeah, sorry, you've had growing up, I'm so sorry.
Definitely missed this, but what is the company name?
It's called Veil Intimates, VEIL.
Okay.
So do you have a name for like what would the line item be called that somebody would then add to their bill of materials?
So like we have a trademark on VI or Veil Technology. Or,
Okay, oh, Veil
yeah.
Technology.
So like Veil Technology inside,
Okay.
yeah, or just Veil. We have a trademark on that in apparel.
Okay, whew.
Yeah. Whole nother legal thing, but yeah.
Yeah, I'm just curious why, so you started with just licensing and like on each end there's licensing and then there's branding and you kind of landed in the middle, right?
Yeah.
And why was that an advantage?
So to license, it was going to be like, okay, maybe we would get one brand and then they'd want it for 3 years or 4 years or 5 years, right? So we always wanted to kind of change how bras were made, right? So it's awesome from like a work standpoint in theory to just license and have that one big shop, but likely one brand would own the tech in that instance. So we wouldn't really be changing how women were wearing bras. And then branding, it felt like the market was so crowded that even if we did have an innovation, the amount of capital, just sheerly for marketing to people who know we existed and that it was different, to try it once and all this, it would have taken a lot. I mean, we would have had to raise minimally 50 million. So.
Plus, you're still not servicing all the people either.
Correct,
You
then we're just a
one
brand that you have
brand.
to want, and a large
Mhm.
part of where we landed was just like, wow, we see this industry and it really, there hasn't been a ton of innovation. The innovation has been in fabrics, it's been in raw materials, like maybe the foam is better, but really the foam is just memory foam, which has existed for 30 years, or the straps are a little bit better, but there hasn't been like true innovation in the space. And that's what we wanted, was to like create an opportunity that many brands could utilize this. And that's how Heather kind of got us into that position. So, yeah.
What made you like go to schools to find people, or like how do you go to schools and even ask them like, hey, can you do this for me?
Cold called. We found out different schools had external partnership directors, so they managed like external partners out like the community. And so we found out who those people were and we cold called them. And the reason we went to schools is because if you go to professional people, you will have to pay a lot of money. And we didn't have the money
Well, you guys-
to pay those people.
There's something called Launch Denver, and our College of Business team is willing to work with any student, any teacher, anybody related to the university to help start your business. So, and that's for free. So all universities have this like outreach component. So I think it's called Launch Denver, and Lynn Hoffman is the one that works on that. If you want his team to work with you on business development, they will for free. Because we, as teachers in a university, our goal is really outreach. Like, we're trying to build a better world, and starting with our own students. And then, you know, that, it's
See,
just.
I ran into brick walls every time I went to talk to anyone in the
Really?
business school. Yeah, and it was so discouraging. And I never knew that this ever existed.
Isn't it weird? It's
Yeah.
just started.
I mean,
It's
like
brand
I've
new.
had, I mean, it was like pulling teeth to get meetings, and then it was like,
Okay, so it's Lynn
Yeah.
Hoffman, because they're starting it right now, and I think it's like there's maybe like an 8-week meeting Wednesday nights for like coaching or whatever, so.
Okay,
Let's
yeah,
make sure
yeah.
we get get something going, for all of you that have businesses and are really serious about this. It's just, this is the perfect way to do it. And FIT, like, this is what they do. I mean,
Yeah.
like, we are the supposedly
Incubators.
innovators and
Yeah.
incubators. I know they do it at Mines too. They'll just help anybody.
Yeah, Mines was really good. I mean, we met with them. We didn't end up using someone, but they were really encouraging and gave us resources. I think we were just looking for anyone. And the great thing about higher ed, not only was it the monetary piece, but we were looking for someone who had a raw materials apparel experience, intimate apparel experience, focus group experience. So there's like a lot of categories of people that we needed and in apparel. And so it's like, where do you find those people? I mean, a school, they're all there teaching it. And so it just really worked out. And for us, it was two validation, like, who are these two women saying they're gonna change apparel? It's like a good housekeeping stamp of approval, really, to say FIT believes in you. They're one of the biggest schools of fashion in the world. Like, it was a pretty big deal for us, so.
And they have a
we wanted
lingerie-
it probably as much as they wanted it.
They have a lingerie department, don't they?
Yeah, so most fashion schools actually, except in Europe, don't have a specific intimates program, and because it's so complicated, they have teachers specifically who teach pattern making and intimates, which is what we needed. We need someone who could see our innovation, pattern it into a bra, and successfully create samples to go on to women. It would have been impossible at any place that didn't have an intimates teachers. Yeah. So that was huge. It was just a collection of all the right people mixed with having their support and being able to say like they believe in what we're doing, you know.
Hey, how much have you felt like you needed to protect the idea?
Yeah, so we spent a lot of time freaking out about the thing and not telling anyone, which was like, oh my gosh, like, don't talk to anyone about it, someone's gonna take the idea. Lots of and like, get the NDA, blah, you know. And we just realized after a certain point we were so far in, it was like, you know what? If we don't talk about it, we're not gonna get the right people. We can't even ask what we need next, which I think is the biggest piece I have of advice, is like, always know what you need next. So when people say, how's everything going, what's going on, can I help you with anything, you have an answer of like what that anything is, and it's one thing. And so we just got really good at saying, you know what, we're not gonna freak out about it. If someone wants to try to do it, we know how much time we spent on it and what it's gonna take to do it, and at this point we're like, good luck.
No.
5 years in, lots of engineering and science, you could be a master in intimates, and I still am like, we're good, so, yeah.
Good.
But too much time worried about protecting the idea. And maybe at the front side it makes sense when you don't really know, but if you don't know and you're in the industry and you need the help, you kind of have to figure out if you're gonna trust someone and if they're gonna give you the help you need, you know. Yeah.
Now so you haven't been to, over to China yet?
No, but it's probably going to be happening, so.
Yeah.
Sri Lanka, China, and Taiwan are all pretty solid manufacturers. There's a Taiwanese manufacturer that makes most of the sportswear and that people wear. One manufacturer.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you won't be approaching the manufacturing chain, or will you?
So we will actually. So another opportunity. So instead of selling to a brand, we could sell to a manufacturer, right? So manufacturers are competing with other manufacturers to be competitive, and outside of price and service and quality, they typically have suites of innovation that they offer to their marketplace. So something we could do is partner with a manufacturer overseas and say, we'll be exclusive to you with our innovation, that you can work to grow your sales channels and potential brands that you're servicing through a unique offering. So it's another, instead of like one brand at a time, it would be many brands that could utilize that, which is interesting to us.
is that, when now that you're approaching that space, do you see the temptation to cut costs and kind of ignore sustainability and environmental health for the sake of a cheaper product?
No, I mean, we've always been, we tried super hard to figure out a way to create a sustainable product, and we're still working on that. And I think the really great thing is, so being a small company or being a startup, it's hard because we don't have the aggregate or the money to be like, we're gonna be sustainable and we're gonna build raw materials that are sustainable. It really requires the conglomerates to like take a stand. But thankfully there are some really awesome people in apparel that are doing that. Like Adidas has said all of our shoes are gonna become recyclable by 2022. Well, we utilize some things that Adidas utilizes. And so if Adidas pushes for that and funds that sustainability, that helps us get to the point that we can be. So it's either creating an aggregate of people, it's just kind of how the world works until someone who has the volume and the money to do research and make the change or require the change from the industry. So no, I think it's opposite. Like we're always looking for how can we create things that last longer. That was a big thing for bras for us, was when you rely so much on the band, fabric stretches out, and that's really the support mechanism, and then it's not worth anything. So how do we alleviate the stretching of the band through moving where all the support is going to, so that it can be a longer lasting product? I mean, that was a huge part of what we were learning and trying to understand, is how can we make things last longer. If things fit better and last longer, you're not, I mean, you may pay a little bit more for them, but you're not buying them as much and throwing them away. And so it was a large part. I mean, we tried hemp composites, we tried eco-foam we do use. So yeah, there's just, it's I mean, apparel specifically is an interesting battle in the sustainability piece, because it has swung so much to fast fashion, and now we're seeing this like quality, good pieces mentality, and it's really a culture shift of the people purchasing. So thank you guys. Younger generation for caring and being cool. Yes.
I just popped into my head, but I was wondering if along those sustainability lines, if you have thought about because I've never heard of it on this front, but like a subscription-based something or another.
Yeah, so Adore Me is a brand that does subscription intimates.
Okay.
And so they are much more lower price price point competitive, like $30 bras.
And isn't, to me, that's a subscription thing, is assuming your product is not gonna last. Like you're gonna use it up.
Or that you have different styles, or that you have something else, like a new thing. Like, how do you keep that customer engagement going once they have it?
Yeah, I think for us, we have other things in our back pocket of innovation.
And that's
that
kind of
we'll
why I
launch.
kind of stopped myself.
So we
I
have,
think you guys
we
are
have a
pretty-
pipeline of ideas.
that are going to launch in
Yeah.
the-
So it's like,
which is a huge.
yeah, we'll keep iterating and the
Yeah.
idea flow going. And so we just created a pipeline, and we're like, this is the first thing, this is the next thing. And it's very possible for us, like we launch in foundations, and then we launch in activewear, and then we launch in swimwear, which is ultimately 3 different things.
And they're all
then,
just big, huge moments. That,
yes, and
yeah.
then different in each of those categories. I mean, it could be a wedding, evening, there's categorically, it could be very different.
Cool.
So.
I think with something like bras, it doesn't really, you don't have to, it doesn't have to be, if you find a good bra.
You wear that until and hope it doesn't change.
Yeah, for your, I mean, this is even coming from someone who doesn't even wear them.
Yeah, it's like you find the one and
But
then.
a sports bra, I would love a good quality sports bra
Buy
that
a
doesn't make
few.
me like suffocate.
You find the one, you buy a few at a time, and then
Yeah.
It's a
that's out,
lifetime.
you go back and get the
And you hope that it
It's the
hasn't
same.
changed styles, and then when it does, you cry.
Yeah.
And then you figure it out again. Like women are very loyal to their brand and their style, and because it's like finding the needle in the haystack. When it fits you, you're like, oh my gosh, this is it. And then when they change the styling, it's like a devastation. Yeah.
It's like a 3-year cycle of having shitty bras again.
Yeah, until you find the one.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, I found it. And then you
Yeah.
buy as many as you can, and you hoard them. Yeah, that's the purchasing process of women. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, that's exactly right. Yes, and if the underwire casing comes out, you try to shove it back in and hope for the best. Yeah. So, yeah. Sorry, you had a question?
Have you thought about how there's a men's suit company that kind of gets your profile? Like, would you go into everybody having their own profile? sign up, have your own profile, you have everything on there, pretty broad, what you like, what you want.
There's brands who are doing that in bras. And those are probably the brands that we're most interested in working with.
Yeah.
So there's brands who do have the profiling, who have half sizes or more sizing options, who keep the profile and know what you want. I mean, they're more of a data company truly than a lingerie company, and they would tell you that. And
Yeah.
so, they're really working on, I mean, they cycle through customer feedback and make changes accordingly. So they're really nimble, and it's because that they're, you know, an e-commerce based company. They don't have the overhead of brick and mortar, which, I mean, this is all the changing environment, right? Outside of Amazon, no one is doing online and then building stores like out of left field, right? So a lot of people are e-commerce or they're brick and mortar. And the brick and mortars are trying to become more e-commerce just because of how people are purchasing. So there are brands that do that, and we know who they are, and
Yeah,
we would like to
they
partner
said-
with them.
How you said, like, how people just wanna log on and click.
Yep.
On it. If you have, like, there's a suit company from them.
Yeah.
And they have your profile suit, so they customize your suit every time.
Yep.
So you don't have to sit there and wait. I think it was just, yeah.
Yeah, I think that's the vision, like, would be an interesting vision for the future, is if you did a scan and you had it and you knew what your insert was. The thing about women is we fluctuate, and so maybe having different categories than that. But yeah, it's a very interesting concept, I like it. Thanks. Yeah.
So would you not like personally collect the data? Cause like a lot of times with, like, I'm sure that suit company collects all that data and then sells it to different suit companies to like say this is what the typical bulk was.
Yep.
So for you, would you be collecting that data on a different server than the people that you're partnering with?
Likely, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, especially in the medical aspect, I have interest in that, but, yeah, for the scanning purposes, yes. So, and I think future state of sportswear brands is they want you to be able to go into the store and have something made for you right there. And that would be a huge differentiator for someone who is e-commerce and brick and mortar, of an experience, like creating an experience in the store that is positive, where you're coming out and leaving, or it's being delivered to you in 3 days. New Balance does that with their shoes today. So it definitely, I think, could be something that a sporting wear company specifically has interest in doing, where you could say, oh, I'm training for a triathlon, I play volleyball in Wash Park, and I do yoga, these are my activities. Okay, scan, this is my size. They print the pieces and make the bra, and it shows up to your door. I think something very experiential and customized is where you're going to see the future of like a brick and mortar.
Mm-hmm.
Less inventory there and more experience-based creation.
All right, we have time for just about one more question.
I was just going to ask him, sorry, about data analytics. It's an interesting element that you were talking about in manufacturing that kind of blows my mind. But have you been putting some forethought into how you're going to be collecting data, sales, marketing, stuff like that? Is it going to be off of these partnerships, or is it going to be in-house, or both, or?
So it depends on who the partners are.
Okay, right.
We have ideas of what it would be like if they don't have the infrastructure,
Mhm.
but if they do have the infrastructure, that'll be part of the.
But you've definitely, it's in.
Yes.
On.
I think most companies
the
anymore
horizon.
are like, data is the currency,
Yeah,
right? And being
right.
able to understand the marketplace and leverage that, not to expose customers, but to create better products.
Right.
Right? To be better
Mhm.
and see what's working and isn't working, and what the market actually is, instead of like, we sell 75% 34Cs, she's probably misfit and that's really not her size, so do they even really know who their customer is, what
Yeah.
size they actually are? And
Mhm.
that's a huge piece.
Gosh, I wish we had more time. I'd like to hear more about that.
Yeah.
Yay,
Yeah,
thank you
thank
so
you.
much.
Thank you guys.